So if we can settle in after we get our coffee quickly. And trying to think of another way to make that one. All right, so next up we're looking at a topic for me that's rather near and dear to my heart. We're really looking at future tech talent in particular. And usually it's described as a leaky STEM pipeline. So we're looking at finding and fostering high potentials in tech-intensive industries. But we're going to take a little jaunt away from the pipeline, unless it's a really integrated pipeline, and really look at this as an ecosystem that involves many touch points. And the panelists here represent many of those places that you would interact. So we have representation. They're going to self-introduce in a second, but to explain the dynamic, we have someone who's a STEM expert who works with mid-high education and even with some young youth. We have biotech diversity. We have an entrepreneur who actually has some technology that's involved in recruitment. We have an employer who also is looking at integrating new STEM, encouraging the STEM pipelines. So I think it's important. What we'll do is we'll first allow our panelists to self-introduce, and then we're going to level set a bit on what we mean when we say STEM. So we'll start, we can start with Janina and then go forward. Go ahead and...
Hello?
The light.
Hello? There we go. So good afternoon. My name is Janita Pritchett, and I am an academic program manager at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. How many of you guys have heard of NIST, or the National Institute of Standards and Technology? So not many. But all of you guys are impacted by the work that NIST does. So how many of you guys have cell phones? Right? So one of the most measured things in the world is time. And this is responsible for actually keeping up with the atomic clock and the time system that you guys access on a day-to-day basis. So we actually maintain the standards and help make sure that things are on a nice even playing field when you're doing comparisons across the board on a variety of things. Although I'm a chemist by trade, I'm an educator by heart. So I also teach general chemistry at Montgomery College. And then I spend a lot of my time doing STEM outreach for various levels from K through 12 up to postdoctoral and even school teacher engagement. So I'm happy to be here and I look forward to talking to you all today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Kim. My background is in industrial organizational psychology, went into management consulting, and for 14 years I was at Dell leading diversity and inclusion and corporate social responsibility, and then I took a little stint at interactive entertainment and electronic arts, and now I'm leading inclusion and diversity at Gilead Sciences. And so we focus on producing medicines to save lives in a number of therapeutic areas. That's a little context of what we do. We are very serious about our mission to save lives and focus on patients. We've recently gone into tackling cancer. And so that is the context of the input that I'll provide shortly.
Hi, thank you so much for staying here this afternoon. I know that everyone has needed a little bit of coffee for the last few minutes. My name is Angela Hood. I am the founder and CEO of ThisWay Global. We have been working on a platform that was started at University of Cambridge about 5 years ago in England. And we launched to actually went to market a couple of years ago. It's AI, so people say this is artificial intelligence, but I think a very important distinction that needs to be made in the marketplace is what we really do is augmented intelligence. So we are augmenting what the human does, and the part that you have trouble with, we do that part, and then we leave you to do the really tactile, face-to-face, person-to-person part. I am not from a normal path. I did not end up as an entrepreneur, tech founder through normal means. I started off as a construction major at Texas A&M University. Very long history of being a military spouse, United States Marine Corps spouse. I have 2 children that are adults now. One is part of the LGBT community, the other one is a Navy sailor. So I have all kinds of diversity in my own world. Obviously I'm female, but I'm also colorblind. And that's the colorblindness is the part that really makes me unusual in an organization.
Hi, I am Mikey Roach. I am the head of HR for our customer units at Ericsson. Ericsson is an information and technology communications company, and we support about 40% of the world's traffic through our mobile network. So all of you using cell phones, we're actually providing 40% of that service network to network. So my job in the organization is to really bring diversity to the organization and help support some of our efforts to bring in top talent within the organization to really drive that innovation and technology field that we need to continue to move forward in as we move into things like 5G and different types of technology that we're involved in.
So I think we'll level set, because I think there's a lot of discussion, and we keep saying STEM, 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 but could we have some thoughts on when we say STEM, what do we mean? Because I think sometimes it starts to narrow into coding, right? So when we say STEM, what do you mean? What is your interpretation? What the term STEM and what that encompasses?
So to me, STEM encompasses everything around us. So I'm a chemistry teacher, like I mentioned, and I always start off by talking about what is matter. And matter is anything that occupies space, has some kind of mass, and that's pretty much everything around us. And so when we're talking about examining chemistry and its applications, that's how it applies to everything around us. So for our organization, we focus a lot about innovation and improving industrial competitiveness, but really it means that making sure that we are at the forefront of all the advancements that are happening in all the disciplines, from chemistry, biology, technology, physical science, life sciences, all of them are important in this ecosystem.
I agree. but I will say there's a lot of acronyms out there, right? So there's STEM, there's STEAM, there's STREAM, because A is for arts and R for reading. And so, you know, we're focused specifically at Gilead on the life sciences, unless we're talking about, of course, IT professionals and other job-related KSAs, you know, knowledge, skills, and abilities, to the opportunities that we have. But I will say that I think the future of work was fascinating in the previous discussions, because we as a race are moving away from the industrial supply chain kind of 70s, 60s model into really intellectual property and what we can impact in the world. And I remember in the past it was around being an engineer, you could really make an impact. And now it's kind of tied to STEM, right? If you really want to make a difference, you can really impact lives through the STEM field.
So one of the things our company focuses on, instead of matching a resume to a job description, we match people to a job to a company. So it's triangulated matching. And the reason why that's really important is because we get a different view of what it is that a company needs. And so what we see now is a lot of the employers that we work with are some of the biggest organizations in the world or some of the most innovative. And we're seeing that they're asking us to find someone that's in the STEM realm but that has empathy, or to find someone that knows how to make tech beautiful. Or there's like this deeper level thing that they need. They need someone that can really bring a team together, that can lead culture, not just because that's the end thing to do or because someone told them that drives ROI, but because they really know and understand it and feel it intrinsically. And so I think that we need to kind of open our mind for when we talk about individuals in the STEM community and appreciate these like deeper level things that really, really matter. And it's hard to quantify, so we can't put KPIs around it, but you know it when you see it because it transforms. It truly transforms an organization. I think that's how we need to start talking about STEM and not just putting them in a little widget and saying, let's go get some.
Yes, I agree kind of with what they've already been describing. Within our company, STEM is very important to us in the way that we move forward in innovation with technology. So we've got to be able to have that background, that deep knowledge in those areas to be able to move forward and drive the technology field the way that we need to move forward as a company, because it's so fast to move fast and so important to move fast in the organization and make these changes as they're happening within the companies. We've got to be competitive. In order to be competitive, we've got to have the best and the most knowledgeable people in our organization to be able to drive forward.
So we're gonna, I'm already going off book, but I'm not gonna do it yet. Sorry, I'm just thinking of other questions. But when we look at the ecosystem of STEM, all right, when we really look at it, so I'm gonna ask each of you from your individual vantage points, since they are so unique. What does that ecosystem look like from your, what are those steps in a person's path? And really from your vantage point, if we were going to look at this as a leaky pipeline, where's that hole? From your vantage point, where are we losing those talented people?
So my vantage point, I think, is probably a bit different because we have a small organization, we're a tech startup. From my viewpoint, I look very intensely at when I'm hiring someone. Are they passionate? So passion really has to matter in a startup. And does a person have the ability to persevere? Because that is all a startup does, is just perseveres. So those things are more important to me than a degree. Can they actually develop the technology we need? Yes, they can. So half of my organization does not have a college degree. And there are, many of them are the leaders in our organization, and they're the people that are developing the parts of our technology where other companies say, how did you do that? And that was because I was willing to tap into these people that sometimes were overlooked. And then I think about the leaky part, I think a lot of, I'm just speak as myself right now, when I graduated with a construction engineering degree and I went to my first job, there was 364 men and there was me. And when I showed up, they thought I was the job site secretary. They could not fathom that I might actually be a field engineer. And so I wasn't, like, it didn't bother me because of my personality, but that would have been a turnoff to a lot of people. And it would have caused a lot of people of ethnicity or of gender or whatever to walk away from the job. And I think we need to be really much more empathetic when a person shows up. And that onboarding process I loved earlier, that people were talking about onboarding starts at the interview process and explain the culture then. I think we will lose so much talent if we do not focus on that. We're just going to continue to lose great people.
So, I don't know if you guys play video games, but a few years ago there was a popular game, I don't know, it's so popular, called Pokemon Go. There was an issue because they had a hard time mapping exactly where you were against Google Maps and the location. So we, as a company at the time, focused on supporting Girls Who Code. We had an internship or summer program that was less than 2 months. And this girl basically had a presentation because they all kind of present at the end of this process. They learn how to code Perl, and this girl was able to connect in her online workable application tied to Google Maps exact locations of free cancer centers. And as she was presenting, there was this woman in the front seat just really bawling her eyes out. And it was actually her mother, who was recently diagnosed with cancer. And she was basically able to, the student was basically able to take this opportunity to take the skill that we learned in less than 2 months and tie it personally in her life and make a difference to the most important person for her. We are in a knowledge environment in terms of the future workforce, right? Girls, minority and underserved communities are falling out junior high school, they're falling out at the high school stage. And it's really important in terms of what majors they pick in the universities for a career path in STEM education or in the STEM fields. And so for us, it's a challenge to, we don't get this right, we're all going to be in massive trouble, right? So how do we inspire and engage specifically girls and men, boys and girls of color in the STEM areas? Because that is the future economy. And that is the opportunity area to make a real difference in the impact in the areas that they care about. It could be anything, that it will be in relation to STEM. And so I think from my perspective is let's see where the opportunities where falling out happens and let's partner together to address that. Kind of like really competitive professional organizations are, right? Basketball, football, they're now going down into elementary schools and looking at prospects. We are at a stage where there's a real talent war, there's a shortage on intellectual capacity, and we need to kind of get our partnerships and focus areas together to get this right.
So similar to David, I think that where we're really falling short is in the area of diversity, right? So we're able to bring in STEM candidates from a couple of universities that we have a deep related partnership with. And our talent acquisition team does a fabulous job of working with those universities. So we are getting that talent pipeline. That pipeline is not leaking for us in that way. Where the leak is that diversity candidate, right? Erickson has a goal to be 30% female workforce by 2020. And we are working with the Girl Scouts of America now to really help us get to where we need to be. Girl Scouts' current goal is to bring in 2.5 million girls into the STEM area by 2025. That's a huge pipeline for us to be able to tap into. So we have a strong partnership with them now. We've been working with them the past couple of years to really bring those female leaders into our organization and touch them early. We really want to partner with them, let them know Erickson, let them know what we do. We sponsor days like Girls in ICT Days, where the Girl Scouts come onto our site, where they learn about building robots in our facility. We've done things where we've taken Girl Scouts to Grace Hopper, where we've worked with them and given the opportunity to meet with other leaders in the organization, get mentors, and understand kind of what they can do. We want to give them that confidence in their ability to be in that space and learn from us what Erickson can do, and hopefully then they will be looking to Erickson to be an employer for them once they've graduated. So it's that really starting early for us and developing them along the way so that they're looking at a STEM career to come hopefully to Erickson, but if not, to bring that future leadership into other companies as well.
It kind of sounds like, now I'm going to go off the questions. I'm not going to throw anybody. I know Janine's going to help me out here on this one. So we're really looking right now at really kind of mid-K up until you hit, because those experiences, like you were saying, are either deselecting, which we'll get into in a minute, or creating an environment where diversity cannot flourish. Now, I'm wondering on that, because we're so interested in creating STEM candidates, as we go back to that area of education, I'm wondering if now that we're here where we need those candidates right away, do we need to refocus back on that education to more basic types of education for scientists? So if we start looking at coding at 6th grade, right? Do we need to reassess that educational piece so that when they're coming into this really vital part, junior high, high school, that their experience with science is more grounded in almost their experience of language? They know the language and they understand the impact. Do we need to go full circle? That basic science research and that basic science, how do we apply that?
So I would say yes, we definitely do need to kind of come full circle and really think about how science and how math is being taught. If you look at the number of deficiencies of students that come into college, and if they're ready to take basic math or basic science classes, most of them are not. So there are a lot of high percentage numbers that are having to take remedial math just to get up par with their international counterparts. So I think a big thing is kind of revisiting when and how science and math is being introduced, the frequency, kind of making it more fun with purpose versus just kind of memorization. So there definitely needs to be a change in how this message of the importance of STEM and STEM-related subjects is being conveyed to students, and as early as possible.
So I think my take on it is maybe a little bit different. Is one of the things we see is that the smarter the student is, the more critical they are of themselves, and this is for probably everyone too. it's called a Dunning-Kruger effect. And so, you know, you can look it up and it'll explain a little bit more, but basically it's the smarter you are, the more critical you are of yourself and you think you don't necessarily fit. And then when you're not quite as smart, you think you can do anything and you just will apply to all jobs, right? So you probably as an organization experience some of that. So what we see happen in the data is highly qualified people deselect before they ever apply for a role. And that is at the university level and it's also at the job level. And so students that are highly qualified that could probably get in the top schools that just don't apply. And because counselors are being pulled, the budget's being cut in schools, so there's not as good of counseling happening. So it starts, there's this group of people that are highly intelligent, and then we have been able through 2,800 partnerships to kind of farm them and pull them through and say, okay, here they are, and identify them. But it took 5 years to do that, and 150 people, you know, so this is not something simple. And so I think we really need to get messaging out. It's about communicating and saying, you are good enough, we do want you, we have other people that look like you.
Absolutely.
And we want to put you with them, and they will mentor you when you get here and make them feel received and welcome. And then they'll join the universities and they'll join employment.
So can we link that back into our hiring practices? Is anyone looking at how we're, particularly, I know we talked about this on the prep call about the deselection process, and then linking that back. I think David had some thoughts on making sure we don't deselect in the hiring process and how our recruiting efforts are also recruiting other types of candidates that may be deselected somehow.
Yeah, so let me share that Gilead is 51% women. Our Black population, Hispanic population is higher than any tech company. We share our numbers publicly. Every organization has a diversity action plan mandated tied to corporate goals. We have leadership that meet on a quarterly basis, CEO and direct reports, that look at policy and process opportunities for us as a company. And we have 40% direct reports of the CEO that are women, one woman of color, one Asian woman of color, and the board is at 40% diverse. The reason I share that is we have a lot of opportunity. Okay, so let me make a clear statement that this is just table stake beginning parts. Because it's a revolving door. If we go and just to get the numbers, we have to have, I think Microsoft was talking about, what is the right culture? Because we know that, we also participated in the McKinsey LinkedIn survey, we know that there are barriers that exist in pockets of our culture everywhere, all of us. And it's confounded when you have something we call intersectionality, and it's especially for women of color. And so how do we address those pockets, and how do we kind of fix that so it's relevant not only to the individual and it's authentic, but tied to the mission of our company, because the patients we're trying to serve is diverse. So the face of HIV, for example, more than 43% in the US are Black. So when we try to create prevention, so we leverage our employee research groups to help us bridge with the communities that we serve, as an example. The reason my long around way of saying this is, I think when we look at the selection process, we have to be very intentional about casting a wide net that goes beyond our traditional, looking at education and those who apply to our jobs, because competition is fierce. And for us, we're trying to get to the answer. We don't have it yet, between sort of what is authentic and what is cultural norms that we're trying to get to. So what exact behaviors do we expect of our leaders? Are they inclusive? Are they adaptive leaders? And we need that to respond to the exponential change that we're all facing, right? So that is the business case. That is the right thing to do because we are serving our patients, our customers. And so in that same intentional way, when it comes to our hiring practices, we do mandate diverse candidates for every single position around the world. we do mandate expectations of what inclusive leadership behaviors are. We talked about the jerk right before in previous sessions. We don't allow that either, but we're trying to stay away from putting that label on that person because we can all make mistakes, of course, and it doesn't help the person grow. And so how do we're also working with Kenji in a broad ally program, but how do we create a culture where the offender learns and grows and doesn't do that again? And the recipient understands we're trying to be thoughtful and intentional about becoming better, having a growth mindset, being an inclusive leader. And I think that's part of the story of getting candidates, because it's more than these checkbox exercises of having diverse interview panels, and because we need people to share their stories of why we are committed to inclusion and why it makes sense for us from a mission perspective, and it has to be authentic, and it has to be real, and that's really hard to create. And so we're still on that journey ourselves, but it's connecting all those dots and prioritizing at the highest level of the company, including our board on a regular basis, in terms of what is the priority for us and what does success look like, how do we measure it. We do that on a quarterly basis.
Mish, can you comment on your hiring practices when it comes to diversity within your STEM roles?
For our STEM roles? Yes, so our diversity candidates that we're looking at in our STEM roles, we're really trying to bring in where we're underrepresented, both in gender and in other areas as well. Our veteran population, we're low there. We're low in our African American and our Asian leaders. Thank you, my TA is back here. She knows it so well. So those are kind of the areas that we're targeting. We actually have put in place we've increased our employee bonus, where we give an employee bonus for giving a referral. So we've increased the bonus for just those specific targeted areas. So if you bring in someone and you refer someone who is from an underrepresented area, we're able to really increase that bonus for our employees. So there's an extra incentive for them to bring in those candidates to us. If we hire that candidate, we do publicize that and make sure that everyone knows we're really increasing our efforts in this area and doing what we said we wanted to do. So that's made a big difference for us. That's something fairly new that we've rolled out maybe the last 9 months or so, and that seems to be one of the biggest things that's making a difference for us. We continue to track our metrics to see how we're doing in those areas and looking to see where we can improve. And in addition to that, we're using our employee resource groups, our ERGs, like David said, to really, bring in people that know and that feel connected into our community at Erickson, and they can then reach out to other people in their communities and help bring those people in as well. So those have been kind of the 2 big factors that I think have made a difference for us.
I'm curious how many have mandates. So we're talking about, in the audience, that have diversity mandates or just diversity goals. So if you're looking at mandates, how many have mandates? And just goals? Just goals. It's interesting because I'm just curious about about mandate versus goal, and kind of how we can work within that.
One of the things we've been looking at, and we're hoping to have a study released on this 4th quarter of this year, is that when you incentivize management to make this not just a goal, but it's a must-do, it's interesting how it changes that. So I think it may be, like you said, a boardroom discussion to say how do we make sure that it gets executed at an operational level.
It's a cultural phenomenon in life sciences. So we enshrine pills and lose sight. So you'll see lose sight with our values, which we added inclusion. The first value of inclusion that we added in 20-something years. It's a 31-year-old company. And so it became a value with mandates and expectations. And I don't know if the Microsoft people are still in the room, but I love how Satya came into a toxic environment. And he talked about growth mindset. And then, after I think the 3rd or 4th termination, people were like, oh, this he's serious about this. We're constantly challenged of how to make what's on the news site for us, the value of inclusion. And many of you guys have it too, banners in cafeterias or elevators or walls. aspirational statement, beautiful words, I bet, probably very similar too. But we're challenged with how do you make that real? We talked about intersectionality. Is it real for Black women in our company at all pockets? What are we intentionally doing to go talk to them and talk about the barriers that exist so we can remove them? What's the expectation of our leaders? So they are judged by it on a performance process. Their bonus is tied to it, reward systems are tied to it. We measure it, right? If you don't measure it, nothing will change, right? It won't be moved. And so that's what I mean by mandates, that it's integrated into systemic change, not programs or events that are episodic, but it's a journey of changing our culture. And we're trying to get really serious about making these things real, out of lose sight. And what's going to be real, and are judged, by the way, of making it real. It's not us, or leadership, or CEO, or the board. It's going to be from our employees. And that's when I'll know things have moved.
You know, it's interesting, so I'm wondering if, if we can look at some leadership, and I'm wondering if Janita can start this, just because I have a sense it's a good place to start. If we're looking at what we have now, and then we'll go down the line, because I'd like to hear what are some of those fundamental leadership and core fundamental changes that need to happen to create change, especially from a leadership perspective.
I don't know if this will ever happen, but we have to figure out a way to remove biases. I mean, as much as people want to say that they're very, open-minded and they have these, great platforms to bring in new people, if there is this unconscious bias that has existed, then no change will ever prevail. And if people don't want to recognize those biases, the biases that they have and try to make adjustments to them, will be kind of in the same place forever. So I think that to me is the first kind of recognizing and actually vocalizing that, hey, there's a problem, and we're making this effort to address the problem. I think one of the big things I've seen a lot in the past is that there tends to be a lot of surveys and assessments of what is the problem, but not a lot of things and this is the solution to the problem. So a lot of employees get kind of disengaged after a point in time when they filled out umpteen number of surveys or they've been on focus groups, but they don't really see a change. So I think part of it is, vocalizing it, but then also holding themselves accountable to implementing whatever change practices to bring about this diversity and inclusion efforts that they're discussing.
I agree. In fact, I'll just share an example and I'll pass the mic. So when I was at Dell, there was this individual making just a ton of money in the region, but there was a trail of dead bodies behind him. So we obviously had the discussion because it was a lot of money with the CEO, Michael. What do we do? Give him a warning. Second time, nothing kind of changed. All right, we gave him a warning, what's happening? He said, hey, put him on a pin. And the third time, we need to terminate this guy because this guy is not a leader in our definition. And he made it real, right? And so I think similar to what Satya said, we have to somehow make these words, and I totally agree with you. When we talk about building in systems of accountability, it needs to cascade down to, you've heard this, the frozen middle, right? So the top of the house can feel like we're gonna set these values and we're gonna set these goals. The millennials at the bottom, by the way, they'll be 75% of the workforce by 2025. I'm gonna focus on, this is sort of what we all every person should deserve a great leader, right? And so how do we make that real and how do we cascade that out? I fundamentally believe the strategy is making systemic changes, right? Real systemic changes in the processes, in the communication. I also believe training is not the answer. The most visceral training lasts, 2-3 weeks? And so it needs to be embedded into when we make these decisions and we arm our managers to make better decisions, because 6 months from now, I guarantee your environment outside the company, inside your company is going to look different. We talked about exponential change. And so that means that training is going to be different in 6 months. And so we have to change the way we look at performance, the way we look at reward systems, the way we provide sort of feedback on an ongoing basis. And to, because bias is, we're humans, it's never gonna go away. And I know much of it is unintentional, but we need to intentionally remove that because disruption is gonna happen. And so in order to be ready for that intentionally, how do we build the skills and put experiences in the hands of people to move the ball forward?
Partially because our team is extremely diverse. It's just sort of baked into everything that we do as a company. But I felt very passionate about making sure that we would remove as much bias as possible. As much as the technology can do, we do. And so one of the things we did is we mapped the entire workforce, we mapped the skills, and then we hid the pictures, and we hid the names, and we hid the emails, and we can hide the universities, and we can hide all kinds of things. So that when the system matches a job to all of the people, it identifies the best ones. And what we hear repeatedly, the way we do a demo is we just sit down with the company, we won't let them share anything with us in advance on purpose, because they always think we've rigged something. So we say, now tell us what it is that you're looking for, and they say, well, I'll know exactly who's gonna pop up, because I know the top 20 in the field, I know them personally. Okay, great. And so then the list populates, and it's redacted, and then they say, well, okay, these 4 I love, that one not so much good than these other 6. And generally what happens is only about 20% of them are the people they know about. The other 80% are people they've never heard of before. And they look at, and their jaw drops, which makes me just so happy, because it's like, then I've done my job. You know, we have like a customer that's delighted. But what they're seeing is they're seeing people that they've never seen before because they've been overlooked by recruiters, they've been overlooked by other technologies, and they're sitting there and they're waiting for the opportunity to engage with you. But what will happen next is if that engagement is not done correctly and they don't really feel like they're welcome and included once they get there, you'll lose them. And so I think that by the merging of exactly what you said, just accepting that we have biases, use tools. It doesn't have to be ours. Do something else, but find a way to remove that bias that you have, and then give the opportunity to people that you've never talked to before. And we have seen great success, and I think that it's not just you, but you also find a person who's never been, or maybe has not frequently been well received. And once you do that, and once you treat them with great respect and honor, they're loyal to you in a way that no compensation can buy. And I think that that's really where we get the ROI that every company is looking for.
So at Erickson, it's taken us a little while. We've had diversity and inclusion as part of our discussions and talks that we've had over the several years. But in the last year or two, we've really started to focus on that, and you can feel the shift. And I think that shift that has really started to happen for us is really at the top of our leadership team. They believe in it, they feel it, they reinforce it, they really walk the talk. They're sharing it with their leaders, they reinforce it, they reinforce positive behavior. They celebrate the wins when we do the right things, and we're starting to make those changes and bringing in more female leaders and bringing in more African Americans, and those things are celebrated. And I think really rewarding that type of behavior and talking about the good things that we're doing and how it's making a difference, it's really trickled down into our organization, and other people feel it as well. So I think once you get at the heart of it, people start to believe it and feel it on their own, you can truly start to make a difference, and that's what's worked best for us.
It's interesting, I just heard ROI, so, and that's our next question. So when any programs, depending on, doesn't matter where you are, how do you measure results? How do you measure results for specific programs, and how do you report those? So if you're not an employer, same, right? You have to be accountable for your program. So I'm just curious, maybe we can start with Nisha on this one, since we've gone in the direction. When you look at your STEM pipeline and you're looking at girls and Girl Scouts, and you're looking at inclusion, how do you report those back to your business partners? What type of metrics do you use to measure the success of your programs? Or are you there yet? Which is okay.
Yeah.
Right? Which is okay. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so we're really just starting to get there in terms of the Girl Scout program, right? When we go to things like Grace Hopper, where we're recruiting Girl Scouts from those different types of fields and really looking for those STEM candidates at that level, we are able to show the business how many candidates that we've hired, what population of those were female, what may be African American, and things like that. We're able to reinforce that. But others are kind of more just related to metrics and things. We're still really growing in that area. We're not able to quite show the return on investment that I've seen yet. So it's kind of still in that infancy stage, but we're building towards that. We're working towards that as a company. And it's something we definitely have pride in and want to show more of. So I think that's something that we will continue to develop.
For our company, we look at bidirectional matching as our internal ROI. So when we matched a candidate or an applicant to an opening, did they receive that well? Were they happy about that match? And then the flip side is obviously, was our customer, the employer, were they happy? But we kind of see the applicants and candidates as also our customer, even though they're not paying us anything. We, in fact, when we're making an ultimate decision, we always err to the candidate applicant side. They're 51% of the decision, and the companies are 49%. That's how we measure. And then our customers have all different types of ROI. And this is one of the things we would like feedback from people. You're welcome to email me at any time and just say, this is what we need internally is an ROI, because we're trying to build out dashboards to be able to easily see that and show you that, and you to be able to use that tool to communicate to upper management and to your team so that the information is shared, because I think that's how things will grow, is through better communication.
So I work in a company full of scientists. The question isn't, do we measure it? We measure everything. So I think the more relevant question for us is, what are the important things we should measure? And so on one side, it's to make sure that our systems are fair. So we run disparate impact analyses to make sure that we have equal pay, regardless of gender or race or ethnicity, in all of our market areas globally. And so we also do the same thing for performance around succession planning and promotions, etc. Even the hiring process. On the other side, it's more around, just like any business. And by the way, when people meet with me, they sometimes say, hey, I thought you were going to talk about the soft feely stuff, but you're talking about business with me. I said, yeah, I am. I'm talking about business with you, and it's urgent that we need to talk about this because 70-something% of our shareholders, about 76, I think the last time I looked at it, is owned by institutional investors. BlackRock happens at the top. So I don't know if you guys know, but there's letters sent out by BlackRock. They're going to look at sort of what social impact you're going to have. Diversity and inclusion, the last time I talked to their chief diversity officer, Jonathan McBride, who used to work in the White House, was this is a key component of how they assess investors and what they're going to share with their investors in terms of what it looks like. And so when I look at Bloomberg or Reuters or BlackRock or Calvert or other investors, I want to make sure that our diversity and inclusion pieces are there, that we're doing well, that we can answer the questions, at least talk about committed to this and look at it because they're an important voice. The other piece is employees, right? So we also use Culture Amp for those from the Culture Amp group. But we've gone beyond that. We looked at working with Mark Cross on organization network analysis because we believe relationships are important in our company, like many of yours. And so we're measuring what kind of relationships exist. Is it functional, location, is it by gender? We know now, do people reach up for sponsors or mentors, and how often do the majority populations reach down, what pockets, who's doing well, who isn't, and so we're trying to evaluate that and integrate that with what we call upward feedback for our managers and tag to employee surveys to see what are our employees, especially in those pockets of intersectionality, telling us in terms of those opportunity areas. And I think my colleague here was absolutely right. I can't, stress the importance of the time to talk sometimes is overdone, right? That's what I'm going to focus on. What are the actions, and is it effectual? Is it making an impact? I was recently at a development session with David Ulrich and some of his colleagues, and he kind of pointed this out. This is what I took away. I want to share with you. He says, HR professionals, are you going to be missed if you disappear next week? What impact are you having to your customers and to your leaders? That was a challenge for us. And same thing with diversity and inclusion. We are talking about the business. I just shared some stats around the Black community. We have similar stats around veterans. VA Hospital is one of our #1 sort of customers, right? So what are we doing for the veterans in our company? How are we building that bridge to the veterans in our country? And so I can give an example for each pocket and demographic and location tied to our patient population, because that's what we care about. And so whether it's a girl with HIV in Africa, right? No social action is gone from the womb from a pedigree perspective, right? And how we need to cure that and provide dollars for free or under $2. And we have an access program there to the face of HIV in Asia, which is a little different, or hepatitis B, which is a little bit different. And so that are the connection points, and I think that's what we're trying to do, and focus on those priorities, because you can't do everything, but you do need to prioritize at the top.
And I would guess for us, in terms of measuring success, I manage in my office academic programs that allow us to bring undergraduates, graduates, postdocs, teachers, everybody you can think to our organization at some length of time. And so we look at sheer trends, sheer numbers of how many people from different groups have we brought in, are we doing better? And from that, each year we kind of devise a more tactical plan of kind of more strategic outreach, places that we need to be, make sure we have presence. And of course, making sure that we're not spreading our office too thin so that we're not having any impact. But also, not only do we measure just our sheer numbers, but we also look at those that stay on board. How long does it take them to be promoted? What is their salary increases? And then from that information, we're now implementing programs that hopefully level up that playing field as well. So we just implemented a ThisWay mentoring program that's aided a lot of people in getting that professional development help that they're missing just at the bench themselves. So we're implementing a lot of things based off of the feedback that we're getting from people that are in the current environment. So looking at our trends and implementing action plans has been kind of the way we've been measuring and keeping success going.
So we have, so really you're iterative on your measurements.
Yes. I mean, part of it is
You can't do the long term, you gotta be maybe a little more iterative, a little more close together.
Yeah, as a government agency, we get a lot of data requests in general, just to make sure we're staying on par with things that we've been tasked to do. So I get calls every, I just had one right before I came in here actually, about the number of postdocs in a specific laboratory from a specific background and so forth. So I have to provide those details all the time. So yeah, it's a constant kind of measure.
So we have about 5 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions that you would like to ask? I'm sure you do.
A super burning question. First, just a comment to David. I really love to see you, your company providing like open source IP for, it sounds like you're having great success in modeling all the right things in diversity and inclusion. So maybe open that up to those companies that are struggling. My question is, so I have a deep passion for education, especially children who are in marginalized environments. And what I have seen with children is that when you open up the door for them and not limit them with the boxes that primarily in today's education offers children, that they just soar exponentially. So one of the leaky pipelines that I see is the limits that we put on our children of today. So what are you seeing out there in the marketplace in your world that is trying to address that? Is that being seen?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And again, we've been only at this for 2 years, and we're trying to kind of leapfrog as a company in terms of best practices. We're still on a journey, as I mentioned, but I agree with you. One word comes to mind is underserved, right? What are those opportunities to provide? And I know there's passion areas too, so we're partnering with the 49ers and their STEM initiative and busing children from Oakland to get exposure to STEM education with the 49ers. Or we partnered in the past company that was with looking at the Boys and Girls Club and tie it to the Warriors and talk about STEM education and try to connect the dots around that passion. But I think the the key word for me is underserved. It's great that we have Girls Who Code or Black Girls Code or all these extracurricular kind of programs, and code.org are great free kind of programs, but it only makes a certain kind of impact in terms of size and scalability. And so, and I'm not here advocating that I have no knowledge of how to fix our educational system or what have you, but I do know this, is that a lot of, I think, society today, they're turning to corporations because, the political infrastructure have failed them in the past, or I think we're looking as a sort of, in the US to find the answers to that question. And I think here, look at how many companies are represented here. I think there are opportunities for us to sort of tap each other and find best practices. So there's no silver bullet, but there is an opportunity for all of us to do our share. As an I&D practitioner, I will say this, a plug for our ERGs. We give them over $100,000 each for each region. We power them with budget, and we power them with senior executives. And so we try to get them engaged in communities they're passionate about. And so all those examples I gave, I take zero credit. It's them doing that. And so we have to find ways for our employees to get engaged. And when I ran CSR, I'll just give one little example. You know what the number one thing that people donate to?
Youth?
And that companies match? Well, most people are parents to their school's kids. Right? So I think, again, we have to build these relationships and find out what's important for us as a community, whatever community you're part of, or communities, and be able to give those opportunities of engagement as well as to make a difference inside the company and out. And the important thing is to engage those employees to be part of the journey and find solutions themselves as well. So that's empowering with budget or decision making or what have you.
One more, you guys decide. I got peripheral, good peripheral. Let's go here.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your panel and everything that you had to share. We spent some time talking a little bit about your program, which is sort of thinking about the leaky STEM pipeline a little bit further down the pipeline. I'm really curious about that, and that goes back to something that Elisa was talking about in the last panel, like apprenticeship programs or programs like Tectonica or
Apprenti, which is coming up.
yeah, all these different things. So I'm just wondering, have your companies or have you all been personally involved with addressing that quote-unquote leaky STEM pipeline further down? Because to me, this gets at a bigger systemic issue, which is we have lots of people in many different industries who've been displaced, who need to reskill, upskill, whatever you want to say, in order to have access to some of the wealth that we're really creating here.
So yes, that is one of the new programs that we've actually introduced at NIST, is a program that allows people that are not necessarily recent graduates to be able to come back and work at NIST as, not as federal employees, but as guest researchers to gain that extra skill set or to provide some type of expertise that they may not have been able to access beforehand. So yeah, this is definitely something that's on our radar, especially knowing that a lot of people may not be going to the terminal degrees anymore. We had to come up with another alternative path to bring people on board. So yeah, absolutely, that's something that's on our radar.
Just some example programs, we're looking at returnship programs. We're finding out there's a lot of women that have left the workforce with law degrees and accounting degrees and all sorts of education and experiences, so we're looking at that. We are publicly at some point going to make commitments to hire transgender employees, or candidates I should say, as well as veterans and other pockets of communities that we talk about that are underserved. And so those are some of the examples of, I think, what's going to be inside the diversity action plans of many of our organizations.
Just even as a startup, we've had approximately 150 people that have been on internship programs with us over the last 5 years. They are from the United States military, spouses and dependents of veterans, and then also, I think, 7 different countries in addition to the US. So even as a small company, you can make those initiatives, and we have found amazing talent that we hope to cultivate back after they finish their education, and some we've hired directly from their internships.
My response would be very similar to yours, right? That we're able to really focus on the CRGs and move those employees forward